In this video, we're going to talk about synthetic division. Okay, before we do that though, we're going to do an example of polynomial long division. Okay, so we want to remember how that works. Before we do that, I'm going to give you a little bit of terminology before we start. So what we're doing here is we're taking x cubed plus 2x squared minus x plus 7, and we're dividing it, okay, by the polynomial x minus 2. Okay, so this one that's inside the division symbol, this we normally call the dividend. Okay, and the thing that's on the outside here, this is the divisor. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to take the biggest power of x on the divisor, and we want to look at the biggest power of x in the dividend. And we want to say, what do I need to multiply this by to get that? Okay, so here, that's going to be x squared. So I write the x squared up here. And then what you want to do is multiply it to both things. Okay, so x times x squared is x cubed. X squared times minus 2 is minus 2x squared. And then you want to subtract that. Okay, so it works out that these ones always go away because that's the way I designed it. But then for my x squared terms, I have 2x squared minus negative 2x squared. So that's like plus 2x squared. So that's going to be a 4x squared. Okay, and then I drop these other terms down. Oops, not a 2, it's a 7. And then I do the process all over again. Okay, so now what do I need to multiply x by to get 4x squared? Well, I need to multiply by 4x. So I add 4x up here. Okay, now we do the same thing again, where you multiply, oops, I didn't do the blue arrow in the first spot here. You multiply the 4x squared, sorry, the 4x to both terms, and that's what goes underneath. So 4x times x is 4x squared. 4x times negative 2 is negative 8x, and then I subtract all of that. Okay, so the first term goes away, and then I have negative x minus negative 8x, so that's plus 8x, so I'm going to have 7x. And then I bring the plus 7 down. And now I do it all over again. So what do I need to multiply x by to get 7x? Well, I want to multiply by plus 7. Okay, I multiply both things, so that's 7x, and then minus 14. And then I subtract all of that. 7x's go away. 7 minus negative 14, that's going to be 21. Okay, now here, we know to stop. Okay, so we stop at this point since the degree here is less than the degree of the divisor. Okay, so that means if I was going to multiply x by something, I'd have to multiply by something over x to get rid of the x. So that's how I know I want to stop. Okay, so now some terminology. The bit that's left over when I stop, this is called the remainder. Okay, and the terms that I use to multiply up here, this is called the quotient. Okay, and what happens is we get that the dividend is equal to the quotient times the divisor plus the remainder. Okay, so that's always true. Now if I divide everything by the divisor, I get what's in this box here. Okay, so then if you wanted the dividend over the divisor, it's going to be the quotient plus the remainder over the divisor. Either way, okay, these say the same thing. This is just another way to say it. Okay, now synthetic division is a faster way to do the same process. But you want to be careful because you can only do synthetic division on polynomials where your divisor is a polynomial of the form x minus some constant. Okay, so that means so no coefficient here. Oops, I spelled that wrong. Okay, so you can only have coefficient 1. Okay, and it has to be only power 1. Okay, so only, we call them linear factors, but no powers higher than 1. So if you want to divide something that has a coefficient there or has a power bigger than 1, you have to use polynomial long division. Okay, synthetic division only works when you're dividing x minus c. Okay, so let's do an example. In fact, we're going to do the exact same example that we just did above using synthetic division. Okay, so what we do is we're just going to talk about the coefficients. Okay, so inside I'm going to write the coefficients of my dividend. Okay, so I'm just going to be careful here. So these are the coefficients of the dividend. Now, because we're not writing the powers of the x's, you want to make sure that you write them in the right order. In order of powers of x. Okay, and then they're decreasing powers of x. Okay, so this was this was x cubed, x squared, x, and then the constant. Okay, and then you want to make sure that you add zeros for missing x's. Because when they're missing, that means that the coefficient is 0. Okay, and then what we want to write is we write c over here. Okay, so that's going to be just 2. So this is the c value. Now, if you're dividing by x plus 2, then you'd want to think, so down here, maybe I'll just make a note here. So for this one, this is x minus negative 1. Okay, so just keep that in mind when you do that example. Okay, and then what we do with synthetic division, so we start by we drop the leading coefficient. Okay, so we have a 1 here. Okay, so that's our first step. Okay, and then we take our c, okay, we multiply it by this coefficient here, and that's what goes here. Okay, so that's going to be a 2. Okay, and what it is it's our 2 times our 1. Okay, and then we add those numbers. So add column-wise, so vertically. So that's going to be a 4. Okay, and then we do the exact same thing again. Okay, so 2 times 4 is 8. Okay, so this 8 is here because it's 2 times 4. And then we add those two things. That's going to give me a 7. And then I do it again. So 2 times 7 is 14. I add those things. That gives me a 21. Okay, so that 14 is the 2 times 7. Okay, so let's just make a note. So you add down the columns. Okay, and then you just stop when you get to the end. Okay, now your quotient, for your quotient, you use all the terms except the last one down here. Okay, and the degree is going to be 1 less than it was here. So because we had a cube, the 3 power was the highest the quotient is going to have a 2 power, and these are our coefficients. Okay, so it's going to be 1 times x squared plus 4 times x plus 7. Okay, so here the degree, or the highest power of x, is 1 less than the dividend. Okay, and the remainder is that bit that we missed. Okay, so that's 21. And if you notice, these are the same as what we had up here. Remainder 21, quotient x squared plus 4x plus 7. Okay, I actually prefer polynomial long division, but synthetic division is a learning objective for this course, so that's why we're doing it. So you're welcome to use it. I'm going to leave part B for you to do. The reason why you might want to do synthetic division, so why it's important, why we use it sometimes, is to check if something's a factor. Okay, so when we're trying to factor things, it can be important to know whether x minus a is a factor. Okay, so that means that it divides the polynomial with remainder 0. Okay, so that is where the synthetic division is useful. Okay, so for each of these, we're checking if x minus 2 is a factor. So we could do, now I'm just going to write here, there's many ways to do this. Okay, so you could use long division, and then you would know exactly how it factors. But let's do synthetic division. Again. Okay, so now here I need to be careful. So the number on the outside is 2. Okay, but notice that I'm missing powers of x. Right, so it starts at x to the 4. Okay, so the 4 goes here. There's no x to the 3, so that's going to be a 0. X to the 2 is negative 15. There's no x, so that's a 0. And then I have a negative 4. Okay, so then I drop the 4. Okay, now I do 2 times 4. That's going to be 8. Add those two numbers, that gives me 8. 2 times 8 is 16. Add those two numbers, that gives me 1. 2 times 1 is 2. Add those two numbers, that gives me 2. 2 times 2 is 4. Add those two numbers, that gives me 0. Okay, so here, the last number here is the remainder. So this tells me the remainder is 0. Okay, so that means that I know x minus 2 is a factor. Okay, and in fact, we know that 4x to the 4 minus 15x squared minus 4 is going to be the divisor times the quotient. So that's going to be, to find the quotient, I use these, right? And the powers are 1 less than the original. So this is going to be the x cubed, the x squared, the x, and the constant. So my quotient is going to be 4x squared, not squared, sorry, cubed, plus 8x squared, plus x, plus 2. And then the remainder is 0. So technically there's a plus 0, but so we don't actually need that. So you can see that x minus 2 divides this polynomial. Okay, if you expand this out, you'll get the original one back. Now, another way you could check if x minus 2 is a factor is to plug in 2. So if I plug in 2 into the polynomial, okay, 4 times, this is 4 times 16, minus 15 times 4, minus 4. So that's actually 64 minus 60 minus 4. Notice that I get 0. So if you're a factor, so if x minus 2 is a factor, it means that if I plug in 2, x minus 2 is going to be 0. So if it's a factor, this part's going to be 0, and I'm going to times it by some number, that's going to be 0. So another way to check is if you plug in the number, you should get 0 if it's a factor. But using this way, now we know it's a factor, we'd still have to do the division. Okay, so that's why synthetic division is nice, because you find out that it's a factor, and then you also have the factorization right away. Okay, so that's the benefit. I'm going to leave part B for you, so that to practice. But that is how we do synthetic division.